Good morning, children, and welcome to the class of English. Today, I welcome you all in this second part of the video for the chapter Evans tries an O level. Till now, you know that every arrangement was being made for the O level German exam of Evans. Governor was ready, the present officers, Jackson and Stephens, were all set. McCleary, the invigilator, had already arrived in the prison cell. So, So the governor reached for the phone. It was 9:12 a.m. The examinee and the invigilator had already been introduced by Stephens when Jackson came back and shouted to McClary through the cell door, "Can you come outside a minute, sir?" "You too, Stephens." Jackson quickly explained the governor's worries, and McClary patiently held out his arms at shoulder level whilst Jackson lightly raised his claws. "Something hard here, sir." "My reading glasses," replied McClary, looking down at the spectacle case. Jackson quickly reassured him and bending down on the landing thumb, flicked the catches of the suitcase. He picked up each note in turn, carefully pressed his palms along the surface, and seemed satisfied. He riffled curiously through a few pages of the Holy Writ and vaguely shook the church time. All right so far, but one of the objects in McClary's suitcase was puzzling him sorely. "Do you mind telling me why you have brought this, sir?" He held up a smallish, semi-inflated rubber ring, such as a young child with a waist of about 12 inches might have struggled into. "You thinking of going for a swim, sir?" McClory's hitherto amiable demeanor was slightly ruffled by this tasteless little pleasantry. And he answered, Jackson, somewhat sourly, "If you must know, I suffer from hemorrhoids and then I'm sitting down for any length of time." So now it was 11, 9:10, and the governor instructed Jackson that to tell Evans of the temporary little precaution. The governor thought that Evans might try to take advantage of McClary. Evans had been got rid of any potential weapon. But what about innocent McClary? He might bring a jackknife, which could be used by Evans as a weapon. Evans might hold him a hostage with it. So, the governor phoned Jackson, who lightly frisked. Frisked means checked McClary's claws. Then he searched the contents of the suitcase and he was puzzled to find a semi-inflated rubber ring. McClary explained that he suffered from hemorrhoids when he sat down for a long time. Then he found a paper knife at the bottom of the case. Very politely, he took it away. You know, when Jackson checked the articles of McClary, he contained a jackknife and a semi-inflated rubber ring. So, when asked about it, McClary replied that uh, actually I'm suffering from hemorrhoids. Hemorrhoids means the disease called piles, bleeding piles. Due to indigestion, this problem occurs. So he said that I cannot sit on a hard surface for a long time. That's why I use it. Children, just remember this semi-inflated rubber ring because it is the first equipment used in the escape of events. Rest will follow, which I will explain to you. McLaren, you have got a watch? Evans, yes, sir. I'll be telling you when to start and again when you have 5 minutes left. All right, sir. Silence. McClary, there's a plenty more of this writing paper. Should you need? Silence. Now write the name of the paper 021 in the top left hand corner. Silence. In the top right hand corner, write your index number 313. And the box right below that, write your center number 271. All right. Children, these numbers, remember, I am revealing the mystery. These numbers were the codes which were given by McClary to Evans, and these codes were for the escape of Evans. Silence. 9:20 a.m. McClary, I'm now going to Evans. Yes, not going to say here, is he? I don't know about that. I. Stephens, Mr. Jackson's given me instructions too. How am I supposed to concentrate my exam with someone breathing down my neck? Christ, sorry, sir, I didn't mean. The governor reached for the phone. Jackson, are good. Get Stephens out of that cell. Will you? I think we are perhaps overdoing things. As you wish, sir. The governor heard the exchange in the cell, heard the door clang once more, and heard McClary announce, and the examination had begun at last. The children, the examination was a bit late. The governor heard the voices of the invigilator and the examinee. It was 9:20, and Evans objected to the presence of Stevens as it disturbed the concentration. So the governor ordered Jackson to get Stevens out of that cell. Then the examination began at 9:25. There was a great calm, silence. At 9:40 am, the examinations board rang through, and the assistant secretary with special responsibility for modern language used to speak to the governor. The examination had already started, no doubt. A quarter of an hour ago. Yes, well, there was a correction slip, which some fool had forgotten to place in the examination package. Very brief, could the governor please? Yes, of course, I'll put you straight through to Mr. Jackson and Deaving. Hold the line a minute. Was this the sort of thing the governor had feared? Was a phone call a fake? Some signal? Some secret message? But he could check on that immediately. He dialed the number of the examination board but heard only the staccato bleeps of a line engaged. But then the line was engaged, wasn't it? Yes, not very intelligent, that. 2 minutes later, he heard some whispered communications in the cell, and then McClary's broad Scots voice. Will you please stop writing a wee while, Mr. Evans, and listen carefully? Candidates offering German 0211 should note the following correction. Children, at 9:40 the examinations board rang through. Means examination board called governor. An assistant secretary was there on the other side. He informed the governor that there was a correction slip, which the dealing hand had forgotten to place in the examination package. So the governor put him straight through to Jackson in Deaving. Meanwhile, he checked whether the phone call was fake or some signal or secret message. So to check that, he dialed the number again, but only heard the beeps of line engaged. Now, 2 minutes later, there was a correction slip, and McClary was dictating the correction. And what was the correction? On page 3, line 15, the fourth word should read Goldenin, not Goldene. And the whole phrase will therefore read Zum Goldenin Lawan, not Zum Goldenin Lawan. I will repeat that. It means McClary was giving the correction. He was dictating the correction. The governor listened and smiled. He had taken German in sixth form himself, and he remembered all about the agreements of adjectives. And so did McClary, by the sound of things. For the minister's pronunciation was most impressive, but what about Evans? He probably didn't know what an adjective was. The phone rang again. The magistrate's court. They need a prison van and a couple of prison officers. Remand case, and within 2 minutes, the governor was wondering whether that could be a hoax. He told himself not to be so silly. His imagination was beginning to run riot. Evans, for the first quarter of an hour, Stephens had dutifully peered through the peephole at intervals of 1 minute or so, and after that, every 2 minutes. At 10:45 am, everything was still all right as he looked through the peephole once more. It took 4 or 5 seconds. No more. What was the point? It was almost more or less the same. Evans, his pen between his lips, sat staring straight in front of him towards the door, seeking, it seemed, some sorely needed inspiration from somewhere. And opposite him, McClary, seated slightly askew from the table now, and his face in semi-profile, his hair, as Stephens had noticed earlier, amateurishly clipped pretty closely to the scalp, his eyes behind the pebble lenses, peering short-sightedly at the church times. His right index finger looked beneath the narrow clerical collar, and the fingers of the left hand, the nail meticulously manicured, slowly stroking the short black beard. Children, when the governor heard McClary dictating the correction, he smiled because German the governor had taken in his 6th class, so he knew everything. He remembered all about the agreements of adjectives. Then he remembered that how Evans will know that, because he did not know anything. Then he received a phone from the magistrate's court, and they needed a prison van and a couple of prison officers for a remand case. For the first quarter of an hour, Stephens had dutifully looked inside the peephole at the interval every 1 minute. And after that, every 2 minutes he peeped into the hole. At 10:45, everything was still all right. Evans, with his pen between his lips, sat staring in front of him towards the door, seeking some inspiration from somewhere. Opposite him sat McClary, and his hair was amateurishly clipped pretty closely to the scalp. At 10:50 am, the receiver crackled to life, and the governor realized he had almost forgotten Evans for a few minutes. Evans, please, sir, would you mind if I put a blanket down me? My shoulders, sir, it's a bit parky in here, isn't it? Silence. There's one on me bunk, sir. Be quick about it. Silence. The children at 10:50 am, the receiver made a short, sharp sound. The governor realized that he had almost forgotten Evans for a few minutes. And now Evans was asking if he could put a blanket around him because it was chilly there. McLeod told Evans that do it quickly. At 10:51 am, Stephens was more than a little surprised to see a grey regulation blanket draped around Evans' shoulders, and he frowned slightly and looked at the examiner more closely. But Evans, the pen still between his teeth, was staring just as vacantly as before, blankly beneath the blanket. Should Stephens report the slight irregularity? Anything at all fishy, hadn't Jackson said? He looked through the peephole once again, and even as he did so, Evans pulled the dirty blanket more closely to himself. Was he planning a sudden Batman leap to suffocate McClary in blanket? Don't be daft. There was never any sun on the side of the prison, no heating, either during the summer months, and it could get quite chilly in some of the cells. Stephen decided to revert to his earlier every minute observation. So at 10:51 am, Stephens was surprised to see that a grey blanket was draped around Evans' shoulders. He frowned slightly. He looked at the examinee more closely. Now, earlier Stephens was taking 1 minute round. Then he decided to take 2 minutes round. But again, when he saw that McClary had allowed Evans that he could use a blanket, he again moved back to his, 1 minute round and peeped inside the hole. At 11:20, the receiver once more crackled across silence in the governor's office, and the McClary informed Evans that only 5 minutes remained. The examination was almost over now, but something still gnawed away quietly in the governor's mind. He reached for the phone once more. So at 11:20, the receiver once more disturbed the silence of the governor's office. McClary informed Evans that only 5 minutes remained. The examination was almost over now, but something still broke away quietly in the governor's mind. He reached for the phone once again. At 11:20 am, Jackson shouted along the corridor to Stephens. The governor wanted to speak with him. Hurry, man. Stephens picked up the phone apprehensively and listened to the rapidly spoken orders. Stephens himself was to accompany McClary to the main prison gates. Understood. Stephens personally was to make absolutely sure that the door was locked on Evans after McClary had left the cell. Understood? Understood. So at children at 11:20 am, Jackson shouted along the corridor to Stephens. The governor wanted to speak with him. Stephens picked up the phone and listened to the rapidly spoken orders. Actually, Stephens himself was to accompany McClary to the main prison gates because the examination was going to be over. He was to make absolutely sure that the door was locked on Evans after the McClary had left the cell. So, after the exam was over, McClary had to be taken out, but the Evans door must be locked. And this has to be done by Stephens himself. So children, that's all in this video. Rest part will be continued in the next upcoming video. Till then, goodbye and thank you.